Going back to one of the things that has brought me the greatest joy that I've had um, in the last year is recording these episodes. And this one in particular is going to be very personal. It's going to be a bit triggering for your personal growth. So, yeah, let's jump right. Yeah, let's jump right in. So, welcome back to the Higher Grade Help podcast. I'm your host, Cena Martin, and I am very grateful to explore this topic, unplanned sabbaticals and building boundaries that transform every relationship in your life. Reason being is the last year of my life has looked like no other year that I've ever experienced before. That may be the same, there may also be a truth for you. And I felt the need as well as the push, or should I say the pull, to talk about this and to record a message on this topic. So let's just go ahead and jump right in. I've spent the last going on 7 months virtually offline, um, no pun intended, not putting out or producing too much content, and really s- stepping away from the public eye in my business, in my leadership roles, even with clients. I literally took what you would call a unplanned sabbatical. And the reason for this is because I can't even bring myself to speak on some of the things that have happened in the last year, but I will say the parts of it that I will speak on. My life complete just it's been a complete 180 in a lot of ways, and I want to break some of them down today. And I also want to talk to you about how you show up and how you may be showing up in the unplanned sabbaticals that are happening right now in your own life. And we're going to take a microscope and focus in on building boundaries on this particular episode, because I've come to understand and come to realize that boundaries helped me to stop the free fall that I felt like I was experiencing. There were some relationships, there were some people that absolutely had to go. And if I'm being honest, many of them were relationships that I didn't want to let go of. Um, Even after coming to the realization that it wasn't the healthiest for me because of the roots that were there, because of the time that was invested. And I'm talking family, I'm talking friendships. Sometimes we hold on to things that are unhealthy for us, and that creates an environment where you are spiritually propelled into a rest period or a transition period in your life. So the question that I pose to you, you who are the expert, you the professional, you the service provider, who in whatever industry that you provide services in, how can you run a business if you can't run your personal life? That's a question that I was asked by someone who is very close to me, a very trusted counsel in my life, who I've mentioned multiple times over the lifespan of this podcast. And when the question got asked, it hit me. It woke me up. because I had to sit and really and I had to sit and look in the mirror and realize to myself, wow, how am I running my personal life? And being someone who is influential um, in the sphere of business development, in workforce development, in mompreneurship, how could I stand on what I was sharing with my clients and the advice and the trusted and tried and true strategies that I was giving to them if behind the scenes my personal life was not in alignment with those very same values and standards. So this question was asked at a time when my personal life was in major and still is in major transition. And I pose that to you. Are you standing on the same morals and values in your personal life that you are standing on or that you are encouraging and teaching other people that they should live by in their business? If the two are not in agreement or alignment, then you have some soul searching to do. And this episode is for you. So let's talk about why, first and foremost, why I took this unplanned sabbatical. Um, Number one, I'm out of a 10-year relationship, which I've shared multiple times. I've been pretty transparent about that on some of my social medias over the last few months. And quite honestly, it was me going through like my healing process. So that's the first thing. That was the constant in my life since I was 21, 22. I'm now 33. And so coming into this new phase of my life, which I'm very grateful for, I'm happy, I'm at peace. It's this is like the space and the place I've always wanted to explore my creativity in. But do you know how have you ever seen like a new development being built in your neighborhood or in like a major city? And you notice the chaos and the noise that happens in the beginning of the building of like that amazing structure, right? This beautiful architecture that someone took immense amounts of time to design and construct, um, and visualize in their mind and then put all of the moving pieces in place. The architecture is top notch, it's world renowned, right? But to get to the building of that architecture or the physical manifestation of that architecture, a lot of chaos has to happen beforehand. There's um, knocking down of buildings. There's walls. There's drilling. There all of this is happening right at this construction site, and that is how I feel about where I am right now in this space in my life. Like the architecture, the foundation is being built for the wonder, for the amazing things, but we had to get a few bulldozers in here first. So that's number one, and that's how I feel coming out of it. So that's the first thing. If you're going through like a major breakup, if you're going through a divorce, if you're going through a major separation, let me be the first to tell you that I am not the first to go through this. You're not the first to go through this. However, look at the gain that you've gotten by coming out of that situation, especially if it was a toxic relationship. Okay. uh Look at what you've gained. The experience alone is worth the time that was spent. Okay, so that's the first thing. The second thing is I'm living in a new state for the second time in 3 years, and this includes moving my entire home and my kids. um both of my kids, two boys, which you guys know, huge gap. We have one going in kindergarten, one going in high school at the same time, and that also has been a huge transition, both of these things happening at the same exact time. So yes, it's been difficult on the kids. It's been hard on them too. And not only that, but we did it in the middle of the school year. So like, bruh, right? A lot to process and to manage solo. Yeah. I'm also returning obviously to single motherhood with precious experience this time around. And I'll be honest, I almost God. Okay, we're just going to be real honest on this episode. Um I almost I had to remind myself that just because you are engaging in a relationship, and I'm not just talking about romantic, I'm saying it could be with a family member, it could be like with a close cousin, a friend, whatever. I'm just literally talking about a relationship with another human being. Just because you're engaging in a relationship with somebody doesn't mean you have partnership. It doesn't mean you have support. It doesn't mean you're not it doesn't mean that you have shared responsibility if the relationship is not healthy for you. And I'm kind of going into the whole boundaries conversation that we're about to have, but I just want to kick that conversation off with this right here. I came to the realization now that I'm returning to single motherhood that I've been a single mom the whole time. And yes, it's not me getting on the internet and complaining about it and doing all of that, cuz like we've heard that content, right? It's more so an understanding of I had to do a gut check, and I had to do a, a evaluation of where I stood in other people's lives. First of all, where I stood with myself. That's number one. And then where I stood in the relationships I thought I had in my life, and then where other people stood in the relationships with me. Everything had to have a posture check, right? So when I came down to the realization, hey, I'm a single mom again, I asked myself, well, is this really new to me? Or have I been in this situation for a long time? It was under the guise or the it was under the cloak or the mask, right? That it was in a family relationship, because it wasn't. No bashing to, you know, the relationship I was in, but I'm just being honest. So, coming back to this, I thought in the beginning that, man, I can't handle all this by myself. I can't, this is going to be so difficult. And I hate to even use that word can't, but this is going to be so difficult, right? This is, and going through the transition of moving back to moving to a new state again, switching schools for the kids. Like, it was a lot, guys. I'm leaving out a lot of things that also happen, like personal things that I'm just will not share like on a public platform. But just know you can imagine, it was a huge transition. And, but I realized I've been strong and standing on my own feet for a long time, thankfully, with the power of the God that I believe in. Right. And so it wasn't so much of a return to anything. It was more so a realization that, this life is still precious. It's always been precious. Where do I want to go with it? What do I want to do now? Because this is an opportunity for me to get back to my roots. And so, how do I take this precious experience to do things differently this time? And the understanding, or the moment that I realized this, the first solution that came to me was boundaries. What boundaries need to be implemented right away? Because the truth of the matter is, the boundaries I had in place before were extremely loose, and I allowed a lot of bullshit. A lot of bullshit from myself, from other people, from the relationships in my life. And it's how I ended up here. Good and bad, right and wrong, the boundaries I had in place produced the results that I'm currently experiencing. And so I had to say to myself, how do we shift these results? How do I get content? How do I find my peace? And how do we shift the results? And the answer for each question was boundaries. So if you feel like you are starting over, if you're going through a major loss, major separation, like a divorce, or anything, any loss or gain, That's a big transformation for you right now. If you're taking care of an elderly parent that's in transition, and simultaneously you still have a deep rooted passion for your profession and you feel severed from your purpose on what to do next, today's episode is for you. So I want to invite you to evaluate the position of your boundaries and the people in your life right now. Is everything in place? Are you exerting control over certain situations where you need to just let flow happen? Like where are you? So that's what I want to get into today. All right. Let me just talk about a couple of the lessons that have come up for me, and I just shared a few, but let's go into a few lessons about boundary setting. I told you why, I just shared why I took an unplanned sabbatical, and I told you a little bit about building boundaries and what why I realized I needed them. So now let's go into how I went about doing that, how I went about building some of these boundaries. And my goal is that you could take what's been working for me in a season of major transformation and major transition to apply to your own life as you're going through some of the changes that I may have just mentioned, or other changes that no one else knows about, but you in your home and in your heart, you're dealing with it on a daily basis. So the first lesson I learned when it came to my boundaries and setting new ones is that I had to understand that my joy is priority number one. This is something that we talk about a lot as moms. And my take on this is that yes, you could do self-care. Yes, you can, pamper yourself and take yourself out on solo dates and all of that. And all of that is good. But a lot of times I don't think we sit with ourselves long enough, or we may not even be able to do it yet, because it took me a while to get to this point where I could just sit with myself and listen and face my shortcomings. But the first boundary I set in place was that my joy has to be a top priority. And that can happen and that can exist outside of selfishness or selfish gain or guilt for putting yourself first. There's a separation that you make between the two. Your joy is a priority, and it can also be that it can also exist without you being a selfish individual, or without you feeling like, oh, I can't, I'm putting me first, but like the kids need this, especially now because it's just me, or I'm doing this, solo, right? And I think we tend to forget that. So much of what I realized in this year is that sometimes people use the I'm taking care of myself or I'm doing self-care, and they use it as like a mask to shield the selfishness. But what I realized as a mom, and if you're a mom too, or a parent, or a bonus parent, you may be able to relate to this. But a lot of times we completely eliminate the desire. I shouldn't say eliminate, we suppress the desire to put our joy first, because it's overshadowed with guilt and shame. And we justify that by saying, by saying like, okay, well, this event has happened, so I have to make sure the kids are good first. Or we just went through this major transition, or um They just lost somebody very important or someone who was a constant in their life for the last, their whole lives. And now I have to make sure they're good, right? But the thing about it is, I want us to get out of the habit of running on fumes. I want us to stop normalizing doing 80 on the highway, but our tank is on E. The biggest part of this healing process for me, one of the biggest parts of this process has been that I've slowed down. And this was another result of that unplanned sabbatical. Like, I've spiritually been placed in a position where the way through was to go slow. Yeah. The way through was to go slow. And that required me to put my joy first. Burning out, not taking care of my mind, my health, my happiness, not protecting my heart, not protecting my body, right? Um, and giving other people a license to pull pieces or to pull parts of me out of me for their own personal gain had to stop. It had to stop. And I made it stop. And I'll be honest with you, I'm continuously doing that. That's now a boundary that exists in my life, and I can't see me ever putting it back down or changing it. So when they say love yourself first and everything else will fall into place, that's a law, right? Like, that's real. Nothing moves without that. And so that's one of the biggest lessons I learned. I learned in this experience. So share your thoughts on this in the comments, or if you're hearing this somewhere on social media, drop it in the comment section. But has prioritizing joy become a boundary in your life for yourself? Have you created boundaries with yourself that prioritize your joy? Yes or no? I want to hear your thoughts. Share your thoughts in the comments section on that. The next lesson that I've taken from this 7, 8 month unplanned sabbatical and putting boundaries in place that truly transformed every relationship in my life is this: each experience that I've undergone in the last 12 months contained pain that opened my eyes. Pain isn't something that we should run from, and it's not something that we should always look to protect ourselves from feeling. I know for me, I'm just going to speak for myself. For myself, this is something that I try to shield myself from. And really, you can't. Like, in the real world, things are going to happen. You're going to experience pain, you're going to experience loss, you're going to experience grief. But it gets into the danger zone, I believe, when you try to shield yourself from ever feeling it. You can't, right? The closest people to you sometimes become the people that can become the people, or can be the person that hurts you the most. And that's just the reality of it, especially nowadays. But I started this whole experience helped me to look at pain differently. Not to say, and again, I want to just be specific and like keep this separate. Pain doesn't equal love, and I'm not romanticizing it in any way. But what I realized is that pain has the power to open your eyes. And a lot of times when you open your eyes to situations or people in your life who are positioned incorrectly, you gain the power to rearrange things. You gain the power to put love and uh self-care and if we're talking about like going back to like your business, like putting back into your business what matters to you, like what's important to you. You take control back over your realm, your reality, your world. When you allow pain to open when pain opens your eyes and you start to pull the positives out of the experience. So I encourage you to look at what's been painful to you in this last, let's just say we're going into like what, the last 4 months of the year. I don't even know. 6 months, right? We're halfway through the year. I don't know why I said four. We're halfway through the year, right? So going into this next half of the year, like I encourage you to do that. Look around and see what's what are some of the things that have been like truly painful to you, but they've caused you to open your eyes. And because you see now, you can make changes, you can rearrange, you can prioritize joy and peace and love and happiness. And some roots you're going to have to pull out and just let go of. Some roots you will have to burn. Some connections you do need to break. Some hard conversations you will have. Communication is required at this point, at this stage. Good communication. Because if you're going to move forward and not just move forward, because some people just ghost and cut ties and cut bonds and that's it. They don't communicate why or how or the reason that they're um ending a relationship or making changes or reprioritizing. And you don't have to explain, you're not obligated to explain yourself to people, but if you're going to do it in a way that's healthy and you're going to do it in a way where you care about like the law of sow and reap, like you care about what's going to come back to you in your life, this is the period, this is the time where you need to fully communicate to your family, to your friends, to your spouse, to yourself. What changes you're making? What boundaries you're setting in place? And I truly believe I wouldn't have arrived here or came to that point if I didn't experience the pain that I did, because it really did open my eyes. So don't run from your pain. Don't romanticize it, but look at it and say, "Wow, what did I gain? How was this for my good?" And then that is a great starting point for setting new boundaries in your life. That is the perfect starting point for putting boundaries in place. So then people know like not to play with you anymore. Right? They know not to test you, not to try. And the other thing is too, sometimes you have to remind yourself not to play with yourself. Like you have to remind yourself like don't do that. Don't play with me. Don't test me like that. Right? To yourself. Cuz a lot of times the consistency or the validation that you've been seeking externally, it's in you, but you haven't put boundaries up for yourself to make sure that you're showing up for you. And I'm speaking to you as much as I'm speaking to me, right? Like I'm talking to me too. So this last year, this sabbatical, this particular one has taught me to run my personal life with the same standards that I do have for my businesses. It they have to be aligned for it to work. And my boundaries are everything. And sometimes setting boundaries will uproot the relationships in your life that you thought would be there forever. But guess what? Some people come into your life for a season, some come for a reason, and some people are never meant to stay. But guess what? You will always have you. You will always have you. And the people that are meant, the people who are your fellow saints, the people who are your people, like your tribe, those who require the same level of excellence out of life as you do, they will align to you. They will appear. You just got to reposition and reposture yourself so they show up. I want you to ask yourself this question: what's for me now? What's for me now? I know where I've been. I know what I may have done. I know the mistakes I may have made to get here. And guess what? I made a lot of good choices too. Like a lot of things I did do right. A lot of things I'm truly proud of. Like me, myself, I'm proud of my kids. I'm proud of them. I'm proud of through it all. I made it was a vow. I made a vow when I had my first child, my oldest son, that I would be the mother to my children that I always desired. And I'm proud to say I feel like I've accomplished and am accomplishing that. I'm proud of that and I'm thankful for that. And I'm thankful that that was in my heart. Mistakes got made as we all have. Nobody has a blueprint for being a parent. But through it all, thick and thin, I'm proud of that. And so, with that being one of the top jobs that was of importance to me in my life, I have been reminded in this season that I also have a job and a responsibility to be the woman that I've always wanted to be. It's also my job to be the force that I've always wanted to be. And for a minute, the mom and the wife thing was my identity and nothing else. This reminded me, now what about C? What about me? So, just like I'm asking myself, what's for me now? And I'm actually finding that out. I'm finding out like what friendships are for me. I'm finding out what relationships are for me. I'm finding out what type of dates are for me. I'm finding out what what personal space, like what me time is for me. How do I like my decor in my house? Like just s- things that you would think are small, but when you sit back and appreciate and look at it and you just enjoy the peace of your world after the building is done, after the bulldozers are done tearing down the walls, after the construction is finished, and you get to sit back and look at that vintage architecture that you invested so much in, you get to say like, wow, wow, this is what I've been building the whole time. So yeah, what's for you now? I'm really curious to hear your thoughts on this episode, on this topic. This was something I had to pour out. It was pouring out of my spirit before I could go into the other things that I have in store for you. I have some really good l- episodes, some really great content coming up, newsletter coming out on what's crippling your business growth and how we can fix that relatively quickly. But before we got there, we had to talk about you, like you, the human, you, the leader, you, the individual, you, the mom. And if you're not a mom, you, the person. Because without that as the foundation, it doesn't matter what you do to grow the business. It will always hit a glass ceiling if you don't do the inner work on you first. And so really curious to hear what you thought about this this episode, this topic. If you have any tips to share or any like additional valuable advice or strategies, put them in the comments below. I would love to see us come together as a community, and share like what's been working for us as we're going through transition points and periods of our own lives. And also mention any challenges or obstacles that you're facing. You never know when I'll pick a question that's been shared after one of these episodes and use it as a topic for the next one. So thank you for your time. Thank you for listening. Thank you always for your support over the years, and particularly over this last year with the Higher Grade Help podcast. Listen, one more thing before we end this. I'm publishing a new newsletter. It's called Success Over Statistics, and I'll share more about it soon. But the overall goal of Success Over Statistics is to remind those of us in society who may have been single moms, teen moms, recently divorced, or maybe you feel like you've lost something major in your life and you somehow have fallen into a statistical category, right? Somebody wants to put a label or a number on your head and say, oh, well, now you're a part of this group, or now you're marginalized, or now, you are the outcast of society and you're not as important as others who are in the upper echelon of society. I want to encourage anyone who feels like they're in that category, who feels like they've fallen back to the bottom, who feels like they are at a point of starting over, particularly if you are one of my fellow moms. I want to encourage you to always choose success over statistics. You're not a label, you're not a number on a board, you're not a percentage on the unemployment reports that come out. Yeah. So if you want more encouragement, empowerment, tips and strategies on building your business, structuring your business, then go ahead and subscribe to the Success Over Statistics newsletter. The link will be in the show notes below. Depending on wherever you're listening to this, you will find the link to join the newsletter, to sign up for the free newsletter. Above this, the link for this episode, or just go to cenamartinchandler.com, um, or highergreathelp.shop, and the link to sign up for the Success Over Statistics newsletter will be there. Okay, good, great. So let me know your thoughts on this episode, and I will see you for the next one. Peace.